Time to re-up YouTube. Your boy Young Mustard is back with another video, and just like my last video, I talked about Steph Curry dominating the Houston Rockets. Today we're gonna do something similar, but talk about how LeBron James turned the city of Toronto into Lebronto. Because domination can happen in a multitude of different ways, but when we're talking about sports, it's usually physically on the court. But in the case of LeBron James and Toronto, matter of fact, scratch that because they only have one team, so it's LeBron James versus Canada. He was literally Thanos with the Infinity Stones. There was nothing they could do to stop him because he destroyed them physically, mentally, spiritually, emotionally, every way imaginable. But before we get into how LeBron James owned that country, you guys make sure you drop a like on this video, subscribe to the channel, and press that bell for post notifications to stay up to date with the latest things that drop on the Young Mustard channel.
Against the Toronto Raptors, I don't think that it's too overstating when you say, hey, he has their number. He has a psychological effect on them. This is what he does to the Toronto Raptors in a way he doesn't do it to any other team in the league. He might show greatness, he might put up great numbers, but against this particular team, he just demoralizes them. It's hard to imagine, but against them, he does it all the time.
Go back to the summer of the 2015 NBA offseason and you start to understand what the goal of the Toronto Raptors were. They had just made the playoffs for the second straight time in the Lowry and DeMar DeRozan era, but unfortunately they had lost in the first round twice, and one of them included a sweep to the Washington Wizards in 2015, a series in which DeMar DeRozan, Kyle Lowry, and their star six-man Lou Williams all underperformed dramatically. So the Raptors decided to part ways with Lou Williams and build more around DeMar DeRozan and Kyle Lowry because that was their centerpiece. They had to make their pieces work around them because those were the faces of their franchise. And it's not like you're going to be landing big time free agents anytime soon because Toronto's never been seen as a free agency destination for big time stars. Thankfully though, Toronto's two star players Kyle Lowry and DeRozan did take a step forward in their game. In the case of DeMar, he averaged 24 points a game, 5 rebounds and 4 assists, shooting 44% from the field, around 34% from 3, and 85% at the free throw line, further establishing himself as one of the better players in the league on the scoring end. He definitely still had his deficiencies defensively and as a floor spacer behind the arc, but the steps forward as a mid-range shooter and just an attacker of the basket, being a pure slasher, was something this team desperately needed and benefited from. But despite DeRozan's jump, he wasn't the best player on the team. It was Kyle Lowry. Lowry went from a mid-level all-star that was an inefficient 18 point per game scorer to finally eclipsing 20 points per game along with 6 assists and 5 rebounds and over 2 steals, while having the most efficient season of his career to date with a true shooting percentage of 58%. For his efforts, Lowry also made an All-NBA team for the first and only time of his career. The Raptors finished off the season winning 56 games, being 5th in offensive rating, 11th in defensive rating, and 3rd in opponents' points per game. And after back-to-back 7-game series with the Indiana Pacers led by Paul George and a very underrated Miami Heat team led by Dwayne Wade and Goran Dragic, the Raptors were finally in the conference finals for the first time in their franchise's history. It was a big moment for the organization because they didn't draft Kyle Lowry. He developed into becoming this player for them, being an All-NBA caliber player, and in the case of DeMar DeRozan, yes, they did draft him, but there was some growing pains earlier on, but it finally looked like he had taken those steps to becoming the player that the organization hoped he would always be. But unfortunately, this is where the story ends for them in the 2016 season because they were officially introduced to Thanos. LeBron James, on a mission to redeem the Cleveland Cavaliers from their previous finals loss in 2015 where Kyrie Irving and Kevin Love were injured, goes into the series and says, I take my Toronto Raptors and wipe my ass with that shit. Because after 2 great postseason series, LeBron James just adds onto his resume another one against the Raptors, averaging 26 points, 9 rebounds, and 7 assists, along with 2 steals and a block, on an extremely efficient true shooting percentage of around 66%. And I don't want to make it look like it was just all LeBron James. Guys like Kyrie Irving, Kevin Love, J.R. Smith, hell, even Channing Frye, they all stepped up in their own big ways. But it was just something different about LeBron James. The man went out there on a mission to destroy that organization because the Cavs were up 2-0 in that series. The Raptors got very fortunate to to win games 3 and 4 on their home court in close fashion, no less. Meanwhile, every game that the Cavs won in that series, they blew them out. Game 1, 115 to 84. Game 2, 89 to 108. Their victory in Game 5, 78 to 116. And in the closeout game to cap it off, the Cavs won 113 to 87, with LeBron James having 33 points, 11 rebounds, 6 assists, 3 blocks, a steal, shooting 59% from the field, made 3 out of his 6 3-pointers, a true shooting percentage of 66%. We all know how the story would end for the Cleveland Cavaliers, of course. In that season, they would go on to the NBA Finals and come back from down 3-1 on the 73-9 Golden State Warriors, with LeBron James cementing his status among NBA greats with one of the greatest series of all time. And on the Raptors side of things, hey, there's always next year. And next year arrived for both teams in quick order. In the case of the Cleveland Cavaliers, they were able to bring everybody back. Kyrie Irving, Kevin Love, J.R. Smith, and even midway through the season when LeBron was complaining about the lack of a backup point guard, they brought in Darren Williams off the bench. Now, I know Darren Williams ended up becoming a stinker in the finals later on, but hey, at that time, he was a decent pickup. But speaking of pickups, that leads into the 2017 year for the Toronto Raptors side of things. Because yes, they were running it back, they did make some mid-season moves at the trade deadline that were very essential towards building around DeRozan and Lowry. They made a deal with the Orlando Magic and received Serge Ibaka, as well as getting PJ Tucker as well at the trade deadline. Because defensively, as good as Lowry is at the point of attack, DeMar DeRozan has always been a negative defender. One could even argue a liability on that side of the ball, and back then was no different than it is today. But despite that, the scoring output from Lowry and DeRozan went up to a whole new level at this point in their careers. Lowry was still a 20-point per game scorer, giving around 7 assists, 5 rebounds, but took his efficiency at the 3-point line to a whole new level at 41% on nearly 8 attempts a game, with the career high that stands to this day in his true shooting percentage of 62%. Then you get into DeMar DeRozan, who took the biggest bump of his career in his points per game at that point to 27 points per game, along with 5 rebounds and 4 assists, around a steal, shooting 47% from the field and 84% at the free throw line. With the once again improvement of DeMar DeRozan and Kyle Lowry in the regular season, and improvements to the roster to cover up as not only a liability defensively, but also as a poor floor spacer from behind the 3-point line, the pickups of Serge Ibaka and PJ Tucker were perfect for this team. But unfortunately, literally from round 1, you could already see the cracks starting to show in the Toronto Raptors team. Because against an inexperienced Bucks squad led by a younger Giannis Antetokounmpo, who won Most Improved Player of the Year that season, the Raptors struggled to close out that series on multiple occasions. And honestly, even though Giannis was great, don't get me wrong, the Raptors should have won that series pretty convincingly. But unfortunately, because of the underperformances of DeMar DeRozan and Lowry at times, the Bucks were able to take 2 games away from them, one of those games even being in Toronto. I mean, hell, just look no further than Game 3 in Milwaukee, where the Bucks blew them out 104 to 77. DeMar DeRozan had one of the worst games I have ever seen an all NBA level player have. I mean, Julius Randle, as bad as he is, I don't think I've ever even seen him play this bad. DeRozan had 8 points strictly all off of free throws. That's it. He missed all 8 of his shots from the field. He had 0 assists to 3 turnovers. He had more turnovers than he had shots made in the damn game. And all of his 8 points at the free throw line came in the second quarter. So that means in the first quarter and third quarter, he didn't make a single basket at all, from the field or from the free throw line. It was in that moment in that series that I knew this team was cooked the moment they ran into LeBron James in round 2. And that's exactly what the hell happened to this team. Because as I mentioned earlier, the Cavs were on a mission to go back to back. They didn't have time to waste with small fry like the Toronto Raptors sorry asses. So while DeRozan was stinking it up with his 20 points per game on 42% shooting from the field and 51% true shooting percentage, just straight up smelly. And also Norman Powell, what the hell? 10 points, 33% shooting from the field, 21% from 3, god awful, bruh. While all of that nasty play was happening on the Toronto side, LeBron James was torching these guys. cooking these guys, chopping them up and throwing these niggas in the blender. As despite Kyrie Irving, his second best player, averaging only 22 points a game on 37% shooting from the field, LeBron went out there and was the driving force of the Cavaliers sweeping the shit out of the Toronto Raptors, averaging 36 points a game, 8 rebounds, 5 assists, a steal, and a block, shooting 57% from the field, 48% from 3, 83% at the free throw line, and a true shooting percentage of a ridiculous amount, 73%. Everything LeBron wanted offensively, he got. Whether it's getting to the rim and finishing through contact, I mean, the guy can do that in his sleep, dominating from the post, in the mid-range area, or at the free throw line, the three-point line, as a playmaker, as a defender. LeBron James bullied these guys like kids at the playground. I mean, we've all seen the infamous clips of that series. LeBron James did not take them serious. He spun the basketball 360 while he was waiting for a 3 in Serge Ibaka's face, and he still made that shit. The epitome of disrespect. Let's also not forget when he went into the crowd and teased drinking a beer bottle in the middle of the damn game. 2016 may have been the start of Lebronto, but this just put the stamp on it. But thankfully for the Toronto Raptors, bad things were around the corner for the Cavaliers organization, as Kyrie Irving in the offseason the next year demanded a trade. Because after losing to the Golden State Warriors in the NBA Finals in 5 games, this time with Kevin Durant at Steph Curry's side, Kyrie Irving decided to take his career in a new direction, leaving the Cavaliers to then go to the Boston Celtics. And with that one decision and move, the window in the Eastern Conference was wide open for anyone's taking. As yes, the Cavaliers did make moves to get role players to properly build around LeBron James, or at least try to. The Cavs no longer had a duo in that conference that was head and shoulders above everybody else. LeBron may have been the best player, but nobody thought that he was just going to solo squad the Cavaliers to the NBA Finals. And as the NBA season progressed, it only furthered that notion, as DeMar DeRozan had the most impactful season of his career to date. He may have saw a dip in his points per game going from 27 to 23, but when you throw in the fact that he averaged 5 assists a game, which was a career high at the time, DeRozan was showing strides in his playmaking chops to add a different dimension to his game that was a big weakness at one point. Then you throw in the fact that he had a crazy streak of actually making 3-pointers. I mean, he finished off the season shooting around 31 to 32% from behind the arc because of a slump at the end of the year, but the signs he showed, just to be able to have the confidence to pull it from behind the arc, it was promising. And then you throw in obviously Kyle Lowry being an all-star caliber player as his point guard, and the role players being good to great at times, especially coming from the younger guys that were coming off the bench or even starting in the case of OG Anunoby, Fred VanVleet, and Pascal Siakam. Because not only were those guys impactful offensively, but they were also impactful defensively, which allowed them to play on the court with DeRozan as well. Meanwhile, despite LeBron James having an MVP caliber season for the Cleveland Cavaliers in 2018, throughout the whole year, the Cavaliers organization was just not stable, and with LeBron James being on the last year of his contract, there was so much speculation on if he was going to leave the team. The chemistry was not very good when Isaiah Thomas joined the fray, the player that they had traded for in exchange of Kyrie Irving in the offseason. He was less of himself offensively due to the hip injury he tried to overcome the year prior in the playoffs, and defensively he's always been bad, but this was easily the worst part of his career on that side of the ball. Just a complete liability because of his size. And as a team that's running Kevin Love as their starting 5, Isaiah's poor play just made everybody's job a whole lot harder on both sides of the ball. Their pickups in Derrick Rose, Jay Crowder, and Dwayne Wade were also busts. Though Wade and especially Crowder could give you something defensively, offensively they were poor fits around LeBron James. I mean, it got so bad that even when they had a little momentum before the All-Star break, they decided to clean house completely. They moved off D Wade, Jay Crowder, Derrick Rose, and Isaiah Thomas, literally all their additions in the offseason, in exchange for younger players like Jordan Clarkson, Rodney Hood, and Larry Nance Jr. These pickups were definitely solid, but come postseason time, unfortunately, Rodney Hood and Jordan Clarkson were damn near unplayable at times, primarily due due to their limitations defensively. So these moves didn't really help out the Cavs a whole lot in the long run as far as this season is concerned. But because of LeBron James' great play in the regular season, being a second place runner-up in the MVP conversation, he was able to guide the Cavs to 50 wins and obviously a postseason appearance. So you think with the season that both of them had, one team barely getting 50 wins and the other getting nearly 60, going into their third straight head-to-head in a season in which after LeBron had lost his co-star in Kyrie Irving, that the Raptors would have the edge, especially after a series in which the Cavaliers struggled with an inexperienced Indiana Pacers team led by their first-time All-Star Victor Oladipo. By the way, one of the most underrated players of the 2010s, but that's a video for another day. But unfortunately, the Raptors did what they always do, which is bow at the presence of LeBron James. When I tell you that this was one of the most pathetic things I have ever seen in my life. I mean, I don't know if I should be amazed in how great LeBron James is or disappointed in how embarrassing the Raptors are. Or maybe I should just be both, because at a certain point in time, you just have to accept the reality that the Raptors were owned by LeBron James psychologically, not just on the court, but mentally as well. Because yes, I understand once again that the role players played well. Kevin Love averaged 20 and 10 in that series. Kyle Korver, he shot 56% from 3 in that series. Hell, even J.R. Smith shot a ridiculous 77% from behind the arc. I understand all of that. But there was one man who was the driving force of that once again sweep from the Cavaliers on the Toronto Raptors in the back-to-back seasons. It was LeBron James. We're talking about a series in which LeBron averaged 34 points a game, 11 assists, 2 steals, a block, 8 rebounds, and shot 55% from the field. Everything he wanted, he got. I mean, we all know the infamous games and moments in this series where he just completely made them look like children. There was a game in which he just kept hitting a turnaround post fade over and over and over, and there was nothing that the Raptors could do to stop him. Or let's not forget the bank shot that he had on the Raptors in Game 3 to give the Cavaliers the win at the buzzer. One of the most clutch shots I've ever seen, just a straightforward play after the Raptors scored. They didn't even call a timeout, and he did that on OG Anunoby. Not DeMar DeRozan or Kyle Lowry, OG Anunoby. This was what I call a real dagger in somebody's heart. They were getting beat so bad, and DeRozan was playing so poorly that he got benched in Game 4. Benched. I mean, you're talking about repercussions galore. The Raptors sent DeMar DeRozan out the country after this series. They traded him to San Antonio. Their coach, Dwayne Casey, despite winning Coach of the Year, got fired after this series. This organization was never the same anymore after getting embarrassed and just straight up dog walked for 3 straight years by LeBron James. And the quotes from DeMar DeRozan just encapsulate the mentality of this Toronto Raptors organization when they saw LeBron James.
You find somebody who stopped LeBron, in these moments. I give you $100.
If we had LeBron on our team too, we would have won.
These are grown-ass men being afraid of another grown-ass man. I mean, I understand nerves and anxiety getting the best of people at times, but to just straight up get dog-walked and embarrassed the way the Raptors were, that's unacceptable, bruh. And when your best player comes out and says the things that DeRozan said after they lost that series, it just shows that the organization and team is led by a soft-ass nigga. And I'm sorry, if I'm Masai Ujiri, I'm not even thinking twice before I trade this guy. And that is how LeBron James turned Toronto into Lebronto. But hey, if you guys enjoy these kind of videos, y'all make sure you drop the like on it and subscribe to the channel. Press that bell for post notifications to stay up to date with the latest content on the channel as well. Follow me on social media. The links are down below in the description box. This is your boy Young Mustard signing out. Peace.